Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another great episode of Landscaping to the Point with me and JC. We are Landscaping to the Point. We're going to get straight to the point today with some really good questions. We're going to talk really about a couple subjects. One is price increases, and the other one is just a good question that JC proposed to me. And I'm going to think about it, and I think I got an answer for him. And we're going to go and see what that question is for everybody. And I think we want to ask it out to everybody. So if you guys are watching, no matter where you're watching us, we're live here. We're always on Apple afterwards and Spotify and all kinds of places. And thank you for everybody that's listening to us all over the world. We enjoy that you guys are listening to us all over the world, watching us, and continue to watch us, ask us questions if you got any questions. But so I want to dive deep into this first topic, so that way we can get into JC's topic. My first topic is price increases. I wish Josh was here. Josh probably out walking the dog, or who knows where he's at.
He'll be on later on.
He'll probably jump on later. Who knows? But JC, with all the price increases all over the world, everything keeps going up. So if you were still in business, do you think with everything else going up in price, would you have to continue to price increase every year? Or would you price increase like quarterly, monthly, at the half of the year? What would you do to keep up with all the price increasing that's going on throughout the world?
I wish that was a question that you could just simply answer, and I don't think that's one of those types of questions. I think you really have to, like we've talked about a million times on this podcast, the importance of knowing your numbers, right? Knowing what your overhead is, knowing what your, what you're paying out, and I think you really have to take into account your purpose of why you're raising your prices. Are you raising them just to raise them because everybody else is raising them, or are you raising them because you have to? On the contrary, are you not raising them when you should? So that's a more difficult question to simply answer. And I think if you're looking at the situation based on what the current status is of the market, I think you should always have an awareness and be up to date with what's going on. Always constantly go back to your numbers and look at your costs and see the areas in which you're paying more for certain items. Is your mulch going up? Is it across the board with your supplier, your fertilizers, your maintenance, even like your maintenance work? Your fees of if you're not doing your own work on your mowers or your equipment, are your dealerships, are your products, do you need to get a new trimmer? Is your trimmer more expensive than it was before? Like, how are you justifying your increase of pricing when it comes to that? So it's a very complex answer. And what you kind of don't want to do is just raise your prices because you feel you have to. Raise them because you understand what your costs are and when it's appropriate to raise them. You might not, it's going to sound intrusive, but you might not have to necessarily raise the prices to what you think you have to at that point. You don't want to be lowballing either. You don't want to be underneath the, what the rest of the market is charging. But, knowing those numbers accurately, you could potentially be a little lower cost than other companies where you gain some customers or maintain some customers based off the fact that your prices are still slightly lower than others. So If you're going to keep your prices low, be smart about it. But yeah, it's a very complex answer. I mean, you have to have your reasons as to why and knowing when to increase your prices too.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's hard. I know there's a couple of our wholesalers that are actually, they won't tell you the prices like they used to. Years ago, they used to have a book. You used to get a book at the beginning of the years. Prices would be all that same price throughout the year. And now they've changed it around to where you literally don't know the price till you either buy the product or you call ahead of time and say, hey, what's the product going to be today? So that way you know. So it's like, it's harder, I think, for us as a green industry to go into and sell a job and not know the exact price of what, you know, what your stone cost is going to cost you, or your bricks are going to cost you, or your mulch or anything of that, if you don't know right away. And that can kind of fluctuate your prices too. And I think that's one of the things that comes hard, because a lot of times we sell jobs ahead of time in the spring to, you know, to keep us busy for 2-3 months. And it's like, how do you adjust for that price increase? You know, if you're like, okay, well, here it's in the spring, it's $50 a yard. And then when I get there to go do the job, it's now $75. What do you do at that point? You know, it's one of those things like, are you taking a loss, or do you just put that onto the customer? And I mean, I think that would be a good one for Josh if he would jump on. Is it's one of those things. I think, do you tell the customer like, hey, my price has changed throughout the season, and yeah, it could be this, it could be that, but you don't, like you said, you don't want to lose a customer. You want to make sure that you know your prices are in the right and know your numbers too. But it's one of those things. It's hard to go out and say, hey, you know, my prices are going to change in the middle of the year, so just get ready for it. You know, I don't know what to say at that point. So, but yeah, I mean, one of the things we do is we increase our prices as one time a year, and I think that's one of the things. You know, I've heard many companies talking, a bunch of companies that they're increasing their prices twice a year, and I think that's just gouging, trying to get, you know, into more money. But if you know your numbers right off the bat of the year, you should know that if you increase it, say 15% for the year, you should be able to make it fine throughout the year. And that's one of the things that I think knowing your numbers is a good thing. But also I've heard, talking to a couple other people and listen to a couple other guys that do podcasts, is that know your break-even point. What's your break-even point when you do a job? So you know exactly that you're going to even break even or you're going to make profit on it. And you always want to make profit on a job. And that's one of the things that I think is always good to do, and always great to make a profit on it. But you also have to have that time where you're going to be, you know, you might run into snags and something that you might get pushed back, and then you want to make sure that you're going to break even on that job and make sure that you're going to make some money on it. So you should always know that, you know, when it comes to numbers also. So I think it's between everything else that's going up in the world, it's hard to keep a gauge on your pricing. And I think that's one of the things is, for us as a company, you know, we always go up so much a year, and we look at what it takes to get up to that point. And, you know, things rise up, you know, gas goes up and down, fluctuates. And, you know, I know a couple of years back that companies were charging a gas fuel charge, and that was something that we never did. I didn't feel it was great to pass that along to a customer. You know, I don't think it's one of the things that you can just pass and say, hey, you know, gas is $3 this week, so instead of your cut being 30, it's 33. You know, I don't think that's worth it. You know, you should know that right away what it's going to cost you to cut a grass, and not have to charge extra for it. But it'd be nice to know, you know, what people actually charge also as a price increase. JC, when you were in business, what did you increase your prices every year? Was there a certain percentage? Did you look at each place and say, well, this one's going to take longer normally than last year, so I'm going to increase it this much? How did you do that?
I did price increase. I had very minimal clients, so it was a lot easier for me to kind of justify my increase of prices. During the midst of my small business, a lot of it was during the COVID thing. I think a lot of us had that justification to do so based off of that time. You know, prices of fuel at the time were going up, costs and stuff like that. You know, I did it, but it was easier for me not to charge. I don't know what to say. It was easier for me to increase it just a tad bit because it wasn't like I was taking a loss on my clients. And I know I'm going to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about so much, but like it's harder for me to give that advice for a bigger business, right? Like,
Right.
you know, I always took into account what my supplies were, what my cost was, and I did increase it a little greater percentage of what it was. I'll be honest with you, when I first started pricing things, it was too low of a price. You know, my leaf cleanups were awful. Like I don't even remember how it was a steal. So if you
Right.
wanted a leaf cleanup during that time, hire me because you would have gotten a great deal. And a lot of that was learning the business, learning what I should be pricing things at. But I increased mine based off of my hourly wage. You know, what if I charge $65 an hour, at the time that's what I would take into account. But yeah, it's really just kind of knowing your numbers, like you said, like we said. But here's the other thing, right? If you price a job too low, you have to own that. Like, is it fair once you realize that you've priced a job too low to get it back on the other end simply by just charging them more for something else? Like, it should never get to that point, I don't think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't, like, if you charge too low for a leaf cleanup, 2 months later, should you raise your price on your mulch jobs because off of that one customer because you initially charged them too little back in the time? That's your own fault. You got to take that
Right.
ownership.
Right. I think you do. I mean, I don't think it's fair to do that. I really don't. I think that's.
But people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do that.
And I think it hurts the customer in the bottom line. You know what I'm saying? I think it's by knowing your numbers. Yeah, like you said, you got to own up to the job and do the job. And if you lose money on it, you got to know that, okay, well, if it's, say a patio job and you lose money on a patio job, you have to figure out, where did you lose the money at? Did you lose it, in your time? Did you lose it in materials? Where did you mess up at? So that way, when you go to the next one that you're doing of that type of work,
right,
you know exactly, okay, well, this took me this many hours, and that's how I lost my money, is I took too long to put it together. So now I'm going to add this onto my next one and say, okay, I'm going to add a little bit extra time onto it to make sure that I'm doing it the right way. I don't think you should gouge a customer on other services. I think that's one thing that you have to realize, that I feel like sometimes it goes against you and it goes against your company when you do that. Because then, when they go to say, oh, wow, I paid, an extra $500 for mulch, when Joe Blow came over and he's going to do it for $200 this time. So, and yours was $800. Where's the difference at there? You got to realize that. So,
yeah, it was easier for me. It was easier for me to raise my prices and kind of justify and explain to my customers, because I would increase my hourly wage.
Right.
And and I only offered mowing and spring fall cleanups, which for me it was a lot easier to say, hey, I'm increasing my rate,
Right.
based off of a combination of a lot of different things, but I think if you're offering different types of services, some services you might have to increase prices, some services you could remain the same. But it kind of goes on how you want to approach that situation. Are you increasing your hourly wage? Are you increasing just, because the cost of mulch is up, now you're going to charge more for mulch jobs? Are you going to be charging more for cleanup jobs? Are you doing stonework? Are you doing, are those materials increasing? So like for me, it was a lot simpler, and
Right.
And the other thing too is knowing your numbers are important, because if one year you decide to increase your rates and then things become less expensive, are you that business that's going back and forth and inconsistent, hot and cold with your prices? One year you're this much per hour, the next year you're less, or one year leaf cleanups cost this, and then the next year they cost less expensive because gas has gone down, materials have gone down. Like, that's not a good look for a business, because it shows a customer that you're inconsistent. You don't know what you're doing. And typically when prices increase, they don't typically come back down, and they really kind of shouldn't come back down, unless something drastic is really into play.
Yeah, I think it's also, when it comes to like that too, by knowing your numbers. I mean, what if, like you're using a certain product and the prices change on it, or you have to get a different product that's even more expensive. You have to know that and take that ability and go with it. You might lose on it, but you have to go with that too. I agree with you on a lot of everything you said there, JC. I mean, it's important to know your numbers. And I think we've been going over this a lot of times, many times with podcasts way back, is you got to know the numbers. I mean, and there's so much in it when it comes to knowing the numbers. And it's insurance, it's in gas, it's in your hourly wage, it's in, like you said, maintenance. I mean, that's one of the things I think a lot of guys don't realize, is the maintenance of their equipment, their vehicle, I hate to say it, but I go through a crap load of tires a year, when it comes to trailer tires and truck tires. You have to incorporate that. If you don't incorporate, at least a tire, or two throughout the season, what are you going to do when you actually have a tire breakdown? You're like, okay, well, I just lost $150. I hear that all the time from all kinds of guys on Instagram. Like, man, I lost $150 on this tire because it blew out. Was that something that you incorporated into your prices? Did you know that was going to be into it? And just one of the things that literally, I was talking to LMN the other day, and a lady from LMN, and she was saying one of the things that you should also incorporate is your equipment. We pay for this equipment right out front sometimes, or we have loans on it. You got to kind of incorporate that into your numbers and know that, hey, if this $15,000 mower is going to cost me X amount of money throughout every day, every hour, that I need to incorporate into my hourly wages, so that way I know I'm going to have my numbers so I can make profit or to break even on every day. So I think that's something also too that a lot of guys don't think about when they're actually going through their numbers. They're just thinking, okay, well, what do I need for myself? What do I need for gas? What do I need for insurance? But they don't think about the maintenance. They don't think about the equipment. Like you said, when are you gonna get a new weed whip? You got to kind of know exactly when are you going to incorporate that money to buy that weed whip. So that's kind of something that you also have to think about too when you're figuring out your numbers, and especially when you're going out for the beginning of the year too. What kind of new equipment do you want to add on to for the business this year? So that way you can put that price increase in to cover that expense for that piece of equipment for you too. So
it's important to understand, like, your budget, and that all plays a part in what your percentages are, and understanding percentages. But today's day and age, it's much easier, man. You have AI. You could have AI figure out what your percentage you're getting out of a job based off what you're putting in. Like you should always have that percentage of your return on investment on whatever job it is, or whatever service that you offer, what you put in and what you get back. If the percentages aren't, your take home isn't, after the job's said and done, your take home is lower than what you've actually put in, then we have a problem, because you didn't budget that right. But yeah, having a budget, to your point about the tire, like having a budget set aside for certain things that may go wrong. You a lot of tire on your trailer when your mowers went down. Now you got to rent one or until your other one gets fixed, or you got to buy a new mower. Uh, Budgets and percentages are super important in this business. And whoever told you not to pay attention to math in school, you guys that run businesses are probably have been forced to learn how to math if you never knew it before.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the subjects. I didn't do good at math when I was in high school, and I hate to say it, but when I actually went out into the workforce and running my own business and working for a couple other companies that I did, you use a lot of math. Like you would, when you're in high school, you're like, I'll never do this math again. Trying to figure out square footage. I'll never use that again. Why would I need to know that in high school? And actually it comes in handy. I mean, it really does know the exactly square footage of a yard, and to figure out all the what you have to come out with to get your percentage of what you're going to make a profit on it, what percentage you need for this, and there's a lot of math in it that I think a lot of people don't realize when it comes to us in the green industry, and that's one of the things that you got to learn when you go through, especially if you're one of these young guys out there right now. If you're out there right now and you want to get into the business, definitely pay attention to math. Like that's definitely one of the main things you got to do in high school. Do good in everything else, but definitely pay attention more in math, because there's a lot there that comes into play. Definitely.
It's a lot easier if you're starting a business right out the gate. And again, I'm not the best business person in the world. Case in point, I no longer have my business, but and I'm no expert by no means, nor do I ever claim to be. But I can talk about my experience, and I think that it's a lot easier when you start it on the right foot than start it going in blind and then trying to figure it out halfway through when you've already done all these jobs and have all these clients, and you're having to clean up a big mess that you've already started. If you set it off right on the right foot, even if it takes time in the beginning, to feel test the waters, have a plan. It might not even be a successful plan in the beginning. It might be a failure, but going in with some type of plan, some type of budget, some type of idea of what you want to put in and get back is better than no plan at all.
Right. I think that's one of the main things. Starting out, like you said, when I started out, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a budget. I just wanted to make money. And I think that's what a lot of people want to do, is to make money. And I think you got to have that plan. You got to envision what you want to do and where you want to go. I'd say I was very blessed on what I got and all the stuff that was given to me, from all the friends and people that I knew. And I think that's one of the things that, sometimes you have to go out there and push it for it, but you got to have, like you said, a budget. You got to have a plan in place, and, you don't need to have the most expensive stuff to start out. I think that's, some of these other big guys out in the green industry say, well, go get that, $15,000 mower. You're going to need it. Well, yeah, you're going to need it, but do you need it right off the bat? That's the main thing. Do you really need it right off the bat? What can you get by to get started? And I think that's a lot of people don't realize that when you start, because, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get this. And then how do you increase the price for the next year? How do you do that? So I think that's one of the things also too that comes into play too. So
absolutely,
yeah. So okay, JC. Okay, in your first year, or any time in your business, did you ever have anybody come back at you with a price increase when you said, "I'm increasing my prices this much," and be like, they came at you and said, "Well, that's way too much. I can't go with you because of that. It's too high of a price increase."
Yes.
I have in the past. So, I mean, I have had people that will tell me, well, that's way too high, So how did you combat that?
So it's funny you asked that, because that actually happened. And it's kind of funny because I I increased my rate per hour, and they did not like that. They decided that I was too expensive, and they said that they were all set. They ended up trying to find somebody else, and they hired them for a month or two, and then started realizing that they were more expensive than my price increase. And then they realized that I was actually in at the better rate, so they asked me to come back. And I'm not a bitter person. I don't hold grudges to that degree, and I did. So it was a reality check for the client, and I didn't get offended. Like, hey,
Right.
this is my price increase. I kind of knew. I kind of knew going in that obviously nobody likes to hear that. Even me, like now, like when prices increase and stuff like that, nobody likes to pay more. But you can't just be like, all right, well, I no longer want this, and let me try to find it somewhere else, and then you can't find it somewhere else, and then you end up going back again. So that did happen, and I maintained that property, uh, and I still do. It's one of the few. I don't consider myself in business anymore, but I do have a handful of clients actually on my street, and they're one of them. So. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, I mean, you know, whatever. I didn't no hard feelings. Fine. Yeah. It's
Right.
my price increase. Take it or leave it. They left it, and then they wanted to get it back.
I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah.
I think you did a good thing, and I think a lot of customers will fight you sometimes on prices and increases, and you just sometimes you gotta realize that you gotta make money. You can't keep it all at the same price every year. So um, you have to let them, explain to them what all is involved in that, because sometimes we'll do that and people will be like, well, the price is way high, and I can get this guy. We just had that this year, literally one that we have maintained for 4 years, and he said, well, man, your price went up. And I said, well, yeah, it goes up every year. You've been with me so long, like you should realize that the price is going up. And he was like, well, I don't know. Everything else has gone up. House taxes have gone up. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, I have the house too. My house taxes have gone up. So, um, uh, but yeah, like you have to realize that this is what price is. And yeah, there's always other guys out there that'll do it for cheaper or whatever. But you have to tell them, like, my quality. This is my quality. My quality. This is what I'm giving you. This is what I'm bringing to you. If you want to go somewhere else, I understand, and good luck with you. And if you want, you're always welcome to come back to me. And I think that's one of the good things. PNH over on YouTube says, since COVID, people aren't as near as shocked as they used to be with price increases. The quality clients almost expect nowadays. Yeah, I think a lot of good clients realize that prices have gone up. I actually had one also this year, because literally house taxes in his area of our town actually have gone up by 50%. So he realized that prices have gone up, and my measly 15% was nothing compared to like house taxes.
Did you
So
say 15 or 50?
50%.
Wow.
50%, yeah. So I mean,
Wow.
that's a big increase altogether. And I think it shocked people, that their taxes went up 50%. But then with everything else going across, when when your eggs were, $3 or almost $5 now, your milk's almost $3, everything's increasing. You have to realize that if you want quality service, you're going to pay for it. And, you're not going to be able to cut back on that, if you want quality service. And I think there's a lot of clients out there that realize that too. Like PNH.
It's crazy though. Like, is it that they're, and I agree with Nick. He says, they aren't near as shocked as they used to be.
Right.
Is it because they've become accustomed to it? Like it's now the norm.
I think I think, I know there's companies out there that don't increase their prices, and I think that's one of the bad things to do is not to increase your prices. And I can realize why they don't want to increase their prices is because they want to keep their clientele. They want to make sure that they don't lose that job or that customer that they've had for 5 years. But is it losing you on the bottom end? Is it losing everything else that you have out there? Your insurance still went up, your gas went up, your equipment fees have gone up. So why aren't you increasing your pricing? And I think that's one of the things you got to do. And I think a lot of customers aren't shocked because of, like Nick said, they're not as shocked because think about it. Everything else has gone up. Everything else has gone up around you.
See, like to me, man, I still have a hard time grasping the concept of how crazy in a short amount of time, in a short amount of years, how things have become so expensive. Like for me, it's still in my head that a brand new work truck could go for $50,000, and that doesn't exist anymore, man. Brand new truck prices now are what, 70 in the 80s, and you get now a Raptor's like over $100,000. Like
I think a brand new F-250 is like $100,000 almost.
See, that's baffling to me.
How do you include that into your prices if you're not telling your customer, if you're not increasing your pricing,
I don't know. Well, it's impossible if you're not increasing your prices and you're going around buying that work truck.
Right. You're buying that brand new truck. Think about it when I first we'll go back. I'll go back 15 years ago. Okay. 15 years ago, I bought a brand new zero turn for $5,000. Okay. Brand new zero turn, $5,000. Okay. All the bells and whistles. Now today, if I went and bought that same zero turn from Gravely, it's $15,000.
That's insane.
That's $10,000 increase over 15 years. Mm. That's a lot of
3 times the price, man.
Yeah, and so I think it's something that you got to realize. Like the prices are going up. And like you said, yeah, it's definitely changed in the last couple of years to where it's gone way up. And it's hard to grasp why, but everything else is going up. So
but also too, like, see, I have a hard time not believing that there were some things that had to go up in price and some things that did not, but they did it anyways just because they had an easier time justifying why they're increasing the price because they're blaming it on something,
Right.
I don't know. COVID wasn't just a virus that went around, man. COVID was a reason to do a lot of things. And I won't get into conspiracy theories. And Nick, I could tell Nick is probably laughing right now, shaking his head right now because he agrees with me. But COVID was used for a lot of excuses to do certain things.
Right.
And that's where I'll leave it.
COVID babies out there, come on. I mean, that's what happened in COVID too. You're stuck at home. What are you supposed to do? So now we have all these extra babies too, so maybe there was a little conspiracy on that to try to, boost population.
Yeah, that like we talked about earlier, once you increase your prices, you can't go back down.
No.
And once everything went up during COVID and, other things decided to also go up too, just cause, I think they used that as an excuse to change life in general and the cost of life in general.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, JC, you had a question that you wanted to put out there. I think we've kind of hit on increasing and everything else that's going up, but let's hear your question. And we got a couple people on Instagram and on YouTube. So
yeah, I was trying to we were talking. For those of you guys who listen to us now, we were kind of talking. We always talk before the start of every show. And sometimes that's some of our best topics when we talk before we hit record. I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question correctly, and I hope that I don't butcher it, and I hope that you understand what I'm trying to ask. Ah, man. Would you rather, most of you guys own your business. Would you still rather own your own business and, always have it, always have that burden of maintaining and staying successful in your business and be innovative and, kind of always trying to stay on pace? Or would you rather be a foreman for a company and maintain a consistent salary without the stress of being a business owner? Would you trade your position as a business owner now, given in all the stresses that you have and trying to keep up with the times and keep up with the pay and trying to keep up and make money? Or would you rather work for a company that's successful where you're the foreman and you have a consistent salary, a decent consistent salary? That versus that, I don't know. Maybe Scott, maybe you could help me kind of refine that question.
Okay, so the question is more of going through business. Business isn't all, how do you say, butterflies and rainbows. It's, you have the ups and you have the downs. So now knowing that you're out there and you're in a business, would you rather continue to run a business if you could go back, or would you rather go work for somebody and just as a foreman and just make a straight salary all the way across the board, and knowing that you're always consistent? Because sometimes in a business, we have our months. Everybody in the green industry knows that we have our months that could be high, could be low, but it's always hard to get that middle ground sometimes, to always have that same consistent pricing and money wise that's coming in. So as you guys in the green industry, I'd like to know, and JC would like to know, is like, would you rather do that? Would you rather be a foreman, or would you rather go back and do the same thing you've done all over again and be a good business owner and try to be successful and always have your ups and downs? I think that's one of the main things you're looking to find out. So
how did I ask that question perfectly before we hit record and then butchered it completely on the podcast? Like, you said it perfectly. You asked it perfectly. You said everything that I was thinking about, but I just said it wrong.
You did good on it. I think you really did good on it. As for me, I'll tell you what. I mean, when I first started, I did both. I actually worked as a crew leader for a company, and I ran my own company when I first started. And I'll tell you what, I loved the consistent foreman money coming in. I love that, but I love the freedom. It has its ups and downs. And I kind of knew that going into it, because I used to talk to the owner of the company I worked for. He said everything's not always hunky-dory and it's never good, but you have to realize that you're eventually going to be where you want to be. And I think I chased a rabbit for years and years, and finally got to where I want to be at. And sometimes you don't have to have 5-6 crews or 100 crews or 20 guys working for you. It's where you want to be and where you want to be at to be successful. And that's where you need to be at sometimes. And a lot of guys think, well, I see this guy over on this show that he's got like 10 crews. I want to be like him. Well, that's cool. If that's what you want to do, then shoot for it. Have a goal for that. Dream what you want to dream, and strive for it. Definitely. But if it's not something for you, don't worry about those people. Yeah, they're doing great. That's awesome. But you're doing great too as your own business owner. So I think that's also one of the things you have to look at. You can all be successful to what degree you want to be successful to. But for me, I tell you what, I would never go back to being a foreman again. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, but I love being on my own. I love being on my own. I love being able to run the crews the way I want a crew to run. Everybody that I have work for me enjoys what they do, and they enjoy what goes on. And I think that's one of the things we all need to know. Nick PNH says, nope. He loves the freedom and the challenge. I think we all have the challenges. Nick goes through it every day. Yeah. It's me against me. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I've heard before is the only person that you're fighting against is yourself, and, we all have that, I want to be this, but it's up to you to get to that point. So he wants to win, and he's something to be proud of. Yeah. I think you should all be proud of. If you're out there running a green industry, any type of business, if you're running any type of business, and, be proud of what you've done and what you're at and what you've accomplished. JC, you got to be proud of what you've done so far and, where you've come. Even, like you said, you still have customers down the street that you mow, correct? So it's like you're still kind of in business, and you should be proud of what you have accomplished. I mean, that is a big thing. No matter what you do, be proud of what you guys accomplished.
I want to piggyback off of Nick's response from PNH, and I really love that answer. And I want to read it so everybody else knows what he wrote. He says, nope, I love the freedom and the challenge. Every day it's me against me, and I want to win. And it's something to be proud of. Like, he has that, that challenge. Every day he wants to kind of go out there and conquer. And he's the type of guy that if he makes a mistake, he's going to want to redeem himself by fixing it the way that he can. So if you're working for a business and the owner makes a mistake, you might not have the same opportunity as just a foreman to make that wrong a right. Maybe
Right.
The business owner doesn't care about making that wrong a right, and it's just off to the next client for you. But when you have pride about your own business, and something happens where you're wrong, or you're in a rut and you have to get yourself out of that hole, like, there's a certain pride after you've accomplished that success. And so that's why I like his answer so much, is because that pretty much details exactly like what I'm saying right now as far as that mentality. He wakes up and he's ready for a challenge. He's motivated, and that motivation goes a long way. Whereas if you're working for a business, that could be Groundhog's Day every single day, and you're not really challenging yourself. And obviously, with your experience and knowing that you could do that on your own, but you have more potential than to be just a foreman. Sometimes that can be depressing, because it's like your authority as a foreman could only go a long way, whereas that's why a lot of people that work for companies end up breaking off and starting their own, because they want to do things better. Maybe the foreman isn't as educated as, or is as smart as some other people, or the things that ideas you come up with, or your ideas aren't being heard. Hey, you tell the business owner, I think we should start doing things this way, and they don't agree with you. That can be very frustrating, because now you want to go out there and try those things, but you can't, because you're kind of chained. So I think that's one of the benefits of being a business owner, is being able to be responsible for your decisions, whether they're good decisions or bad decisions, and continue forward with with those challenges. That's an awesome answer, man. I really do like that a lot. I think that's an experienced person giving a good response right there.
Right. I think it's very good information, and I think that everybody should be that. I think there is that ability. If you want to be a foreman, you can be a foreman. You can be any part in this. Even if you want to be an owner, you can be an owner, and you just take pride in it. You know what I'm saying? Even what he's saying, he's proud of it. Everything you do, you should be proud of. Yeah, you're going to have challenges, and you're going to have mistakes that you're going to have to own up to, like what you said earlier, JC, and you learn from them. I think they're learning mistakes than they are more than, mistakes that you're upset about. So I think that's what you got to do, is always learn from what you have a mistake of. So,
yeah, no, that's a good answer. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've had a really good topic here. If any of you guys have any more questions on this, or, I'd like to know, people's, would you increase, stuff, if you increase your prices yearly, if you increase them half a year or what, I'd like to know, because I think that's what we all like to know is here. And we like to give it out to people straight and kind of get to the point and tell people what's really out there, that, what's going on in the green industry. I think there's a lot of things that people go to different people and they just tell them whatever, and whatever they experience. But like Nick's gone through challenges in his life. We've all gone through challenges in our life as business owners. JC, you've gone through challenges running a business. We all have, and I think you got to learn from them and adapt. Like I said earlier, is like, make sure you have in your budget for a tire. Make sure you have in your budget for a piece of equipment in case something breaks down, or you got to rent something, like you said. You never know, because every day is different running a business. It's not like some of these guys that are out there right now that are telling you, hey, go out, buy this equipment. It's going to be so good. You're going to last 5 years before you got to buy a new one. They don't tell you about that tire that's blowing out. They're not telling you about that engine that's going out. You're not telling you about a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there right now that are telling you a lot of good things. Nick's one of them. If you go to P&H, Nick at P&H, he'll tell you a bunch of stuff that goes on. He's had problems with his trailer this year. He's got to fix a couple times. He's had problems with tires. We've all had problems with tires. There's a lot of good guys out there that'll tell you what you really need to know. And I think you got to learn from us all. I think that's one of the things is, if you're watching this or listening to this podcast, there's a lot here that we can all give out to you guys for free, and we ain't going to charge you for it. So I think that's one of the good things about it.
I think like planning ahead, right? And we were just talking about buying new equipment, buying new trucks, and a good way to mentally prepare yourself in your business is that when you buy that new mower, you should already be thinking about how you're going to go about buying the next mower.
Right.
Don't just get caught up in the honeymoon of, oh, wow, I have a brand new mower now, so things are going to be good for a little while. The day you start thinking about the day you buy that new mower and you get that in your hands, you should be starting to think about the future replacement of that mower and the things that you need to do to get to that point, or the things you need to do so that when that situation comes, you're already prepared for that. When you buy a brand new truck and you get that new truck in your fleet, you should already be planning for the next time you have to buy that truck. And I think, if you have that, mentality where you're setting aside, your budget and funds and things like that for that blown tire, like you said, it's no surprise. When it comes to replace it, you're like, yeah, that's cool. I got a flat tire, a broken tire, I got to replace it. You're not just scrambling and stressing about how you're going to pay for it, because you're already behind at that point.
Yeah. I think that's what you should all do. I mean, everything has a life expectancy on it when it comes to green industry equipment, like weed whips, blowers, mowers, definitely. And I think, like you said, once you buy that piece of equipment, you gotta kind of get ahead of it and say, when am I gonna buy my next thing? Nick's a real good guy. Nick's got I think he's got like 7 blowers. Okay, he's ready for it. He's got stuff already planned ahead of time. He's already buying his next one. I think he's going to buy another one this year just to be ahead of it. And you got to be able ahead of it and be ready for it. And you got to plan for that. You got to budget for it and be ready to go for it. So make sure you're definitely charging for it. Make sure when you're increasing your prices, you've got it in there. When you're making your budget, make sure you got that in there. Make sure if you're doing hourly wages, make sure you got prices in for all the equipment that you're using. I think that's one of the main things too. So. But JC, you got anything else to add before we end out tonight?
No, I know it's a Monday. It's a different time slot than usual. But that's the beauty of having this podcast. Sometimes schedules are difficult and whatnot, but just know that, man, it's been, we need to celebrate soon, because I don't know how long it's been since we've been doing this, but I'd say a few years now, right?
Yeah, a couple years. Yeah.
We should have like a anniversary, figure out our anniversary and have an anniversary spectacular or something,
Yeah, maybe we'll have something at Equip. I think whoever's coming to Equip, let us know, because maybe we can have something at Equip. I know a couple booths that we could probably set up at. Maybe we could have a live podcast there and have a bunch of people come over and just jump on and talk with us. So
isn't that crazy? Like it's already at that point where Equip season's around the corner, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that kind of came fast.
It's coming. It's already June. It's halfway through the year. I mean, come on. I mean, think about it. Equip will be here before we know it, guys. So
a lot of people, and it's funny, a lot of people gauge like the end of their season or the season like around Equip. Like they work towards that point, and that's their vacation, like their time off. Yeah, we're gonna work hard up until Equip.
Yeah,
and then when we get back from Equip, we're gonna like catch up. Yeah, like it's like a little tradition.
It's one of those things. I hear a lot of guys that go to Equip tell their customers, "I got to take off a week because I'm going to this big industry show and I got to be there." And like, just telling your customers that, and they're just like, "What? Wait a minute," and you're like, "Okay, the home show you go to, it's like that, but it's like 10 times that, and it's just for us green guys." It's just so much to tell, a customer, and I think a lot of customers enjoy that too. That's a good way of learning. It's a good way to network with people too. So it's an awesome time.
Yep, it's a great time. Great time.
Yep. Well, thank you to our sponsors, to Cujo for sponsoring us for some work boots. If you need some boots, shorts, pants, they got some real good hats and some good gear. So definitely go check them out. I got a special link that you guys can go ahead and save 10% off your first order if you haven't ordered yet. So definitely hit me up for that. Then also go to Pro Parts Direct if you're looking for any parts for any of your equipment. They probably got it, and they can hook you up fast and get it to you quickly. Thanks, Pro Parts Direct. And then also thank you to Awesome Candle Company. They're going to get you guys set up with some good candles. And let us know, because we got some good special candles coming up soon.
Coming soon.
Yeah, I can't wait to smell them. So definitely if you need anything else, let us know. Continue to listen and watch us. Thank you all for joining in. No matter where you're watching us or listening to us, thank you guys for doing that. And hopefully one time we'll be even higher up than 12 in the world. So you never know where we'll be at next week. So thanks, guys, for watching and listening, and we will talk to you guys soon. So maybe we'll be back.